Welcome to the July 8th, 2020 edition of the UL Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series, A Seat at the Table, Black Male Edition. My name is Kenneth L. Johnson. I'm your host and president of the Harlem, New York-based diversity recruitment firm, East Coast Executives. A big piece of the work we do here at the Urban Leagues Job Network Digital Career Success Series is not only bring you leaders and subject matter experts on the topic of career success, but we also like to make you aware of some of the amazing Black professionals that are doing some incredible work out here in the industry. I was introduced to the work of our guest today while searching for the perfect individual to frame a panel discussion that my firm, East Coast Executives, was hosting on the future of work for Black men in America. This was based on the results of a McKinsey & Company survey that stated that Black males would be the most negatively impacted by AI and automation. My search led me to Mr. Mark Hall through an article he had contributed on the Forbes platform regarding the results of this study. We connected, shared a conversation, and immediately I knew that he was the perfect guest to also deliver this segment on the Digital Career Success Series. Join us today in welcoming Mr. Mark Hall to the program. Mark, thanks for joining us today, sir.
Absolutely. Excited to be here, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. So if you don't mind, please introduce yourself, start your presentation. Let's go. I'm excited. I know you got a bunch of stuff to share. I'm going to move out the way and let you go, my friend.
I really appreciate that. First off, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody on the live stream, and depending on where and when you're watching this. Excited to be here and looking forward to jumping into some Q&A. Before we do that, I want to lay the foundation for a few facts and ideas and strategies that hopefully will make the discussion a little more meaningful. I'll do my best to keep this presentation brief, and at the end, I'll actually show you where you can get a copy of the presentation if any of this is of interest. So let's jump into it. So here are a few of the things we're going to cover. I'll give you a little background on myself, set the stage with some facts, talk about how you should think about your career, some strategies that might provide some success along your journey, and then we'll wrap up with a summary and closing. Before we jump into a quick disclaimer, I'm not here representing any company or organization. These are all my own opinions, and if any of this information is useful to you, I really hope you take advantage of it and use it to your benefit. So quick introduction on me. Regarding my career, I currently lead partnership efforts for West Coast-based venture capital firms and startups that want to work with Google. Prior to this, I've spent time in sales management and other roles. The key arc of this is throughout my career, I've had a ton of setbacks, successes, changes of course, you name it. Been in management, been an individual contributor, and I've learned a ton, both from my experiences, but also experiences of my peers and colleagues. Hopefully a lot of what we talk about today will resonate and you can use it to your success. Beyond that, I also write for Forbes, as Ken mentioned, and I've had the fortune of writing for Business Insider and Huffington Post in the past. So to make this conversation valuable, I think we need to agree on a core set of facts. In preparation for this presentation, I pulled some data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the numbers weren't surprising, right? Like, it reinforced an important point that many of us knew. Black and brown people just simply aren't represented equitably across a number of key industries. In this presentation, we're not going to talk about all the reasons why, but we can talk about how you can improve your specific situation so that you can help yourself, but also collectively we can move these numbers forward. So a recent report I came across from a reputable think tank is the fact that we're grossly underrepresented in senior leadership and management positions. Black people make up roughly 12% of the US population, but only 3% of senior leadership roles. This creates a huge set of problems that we're going to talk about in a minute. When we actually get into these corporate environments, I think one of the big challenges, things aren't always how we expect them to be, right? How many times have you personally experienced this? They market one thing on their website. When you actually get into the corporate environment, the reality looks really different. And that could be a jarring experience for many. So as I mentioned before, like representation really matters. Problems stem when we don't have these representation across key industries and leadership roles, right? It makes it really harder to eliminate and minimize biases throughout corporate processes. it's harder for underrepresented employees to find mentors and sponsors to help pull them up. And I think arguably for the broader organization, it's important because it actually makes it much harder to build a set of diverse products and services for a broad audience if the people who are making these products don't look like the user base. Okay, so now that we've kind of grounded ourselves in some of the facts, the unfortunate facts, let's talk about how you should think about your career and the way you can kind of frame your journey in a way that's going to provide a helpful map. I want to start with a great quote, or at least a quote I perceive as pretty helpful, from Angela Benton, who's an influential and, in my opinion, a dynamite entrepreneur. I'll give you a quick moment to read this quote. A key takeaway here is to ignore all the distractions that go on as you're on your journey and focus solely on your goals, your intent, and your reasons why. So another way to think about your career is to frame it as a journey, right? It's nonlinear. This drawing, I think, does a really good job of actually illustrating how your career likely will go. It definitely represents sort of my experience, and I have hopefully many more years, in the workplace. And there will be surprises, both good and bad, right? You may deviate off course once, twice, 3 times. All of that is okay, right? This is a nonlinear path, and you're going to learn lessons along the way. So appreciate it, recognize it, and accept it. Let's talk through a few important terms that are often conflated, right? Career growth, career development. Like, what do those things actually mean? At least from my vantage point, career growth is actually more about setting and reaching goals of where you want to be in a given, company, field, whatever it may be. Career development, on the other hand, is actually about gaining those skills, the ideas, the experiences you want. That's going to help you accomplish multiple goals along the path. So when you think about your experience, don't look at it solely as career growth. How do I get from point A to point B? Think about it as, how do I get these experiences that I need? And to build on that conversation, maybe we can kind of broaden the term, right? Most people actually think of career growth as a traditional ladder, right? With things like title and pay. This is actually an outdated model. A career lattice might be a better representation of this, and it's actually a more prevalent path for a lot of people in the workplace. It represents the various ways that you can move in your job or your role and help you progress toward your career. It's a good way to visualize what does a path look like across a given organization or industry. The example here is actually in a sales capacity where instead of just moving up the ladder, you actually weave your way through a core set of experiences. And I think it allows you to gain skills and learn new things as you manage maybe different customer types and you get various responsibilities under your belt, all of which directionally will get you closer to where you want to be. As you think about your career, I think the best thing you could do is focus on delivering strong results. Without that, everything is that much more difficult. In my opinion, this slide is one of the more important ones, right? It recognizes when you create meaningful impact in your company, it will unlock a whole set of things that's going to allow you to create more successful paths. Now, everybody is going to have a different set of impact and value criteria in their organization. Here's a list of a few. As an example, if you're in a leadership or a sales or management capacity, it could be revenue-related goals or impact metrics. If you're in a customer support type function, maybe CSAT or the number of cases resolved might be a more relevant or pertinent impact metric. If you're in program or project management, maybe it's the number of projects you've completed. So here are a core set of examples. I think what's most important is that you identify and understand what those success criteria look like in your given organization by talking with your leadership team, understanding what are the things they expect of you. Once you've understood that, then obviously it's performing against that. It's executing. It's doing all the things that you know to be true and critical to your experience and your journey. What's really, really important here is once you've actually done those things, you have to document that. You have to share it with your leader, your leader's leader, whoever you have in your executive chain that you can ensure you're demonstrating real value. the more people that know about it, the better outcomes you'll find. All too often, and I also find myself doing this, but folks in my network, they do great work, but they don't share it. The numbers don't always speak for themselves. It's part of the story, but it's not the full story. So now that we've talked about your career, let's talk about some winning strategies, and I want to spend a few moments here. So what can you do today moving forward to develop your career? I'm going to outline roughly 8 or so strategies. So the first is finding mentorship. This is a phrase that I'm sure most of you have heard in some way, shape, or form, but it's really critical. It's a starting point where you need to learn from those who've been successful in ways that you want to succeed, meaning informally or formally, find those who can provide guidance and advice on what's allowed them to find the type of success that they have, if it's something of interest to you. Next is knowing what success looks like. And to be frank, this is something that I think too many people overlook, right? You don't always know what the goalpost looks like unless you've taken time and dedicated effort to figure out what does success look like in your core role, in the future role you're aspiring for, in the type of skills you want to gain. That takes effort, and you sitting down and defining that is key, right? Understanding what high quality work can and should look like, both from your perspective, but also your leadership and management team. Having that conversation, that dialogue, it should be an ongoing process, and in my opinion, it doesn't happen often enough. Sponsorship is another thing we're going to talk about more in depth in a moment, but at a high level, I would say really be so good that leaders want to advocate for you when you're not in the room, right? Somebody who can vocalize your success on your behalf when you're not there. And hold leaders accountable. If you're going back to my prior point about documenting your success, documenting your impact, if you have a plan, and we're going to talk about a plan later, it's important that you share that, but you also hold the leaders accountable who understood and agreed to see your success and help you get from point A to point B. Along the journey, that could be a manager, a mentor, it could be various people, but once you share these goals and they verbally or unconsciously, give you that sense that they want to work with you, make sure you hold them accountable throughout that process. Next is networking. I think this is a key point most of us are aware of, but we probably don't look at it from all the different dimensions that we should. So there's networking internally and networking externally. The quote that I love and I hear so often is, your network is your net worth. I think it's so true. It's not just about what you do and how you do it, but also who you know. Those things matter. So always be connecting with people inside your organization, outside. Use tools like LinkedIn. I think it's critical and often underutilized. And it's great. It's an easy way to connect with people, demonstrate your ambitions, your successes, and even your challenges, right? Being really transparent about that is important, and oftentimes can connect you with the right people if they're willing to help. Vocalizing your goals is similar to documenting it and holding people accountable. You just need to ensure people in your ecosystem, in your environment, are aware of the types of goals that you have for yourself. And ideally, you want to make sure your leadership team understands what that 6 to 12 or 18 to 24 month runway looks like for where you want to get to, and what are the specific steps and skills and maybe trainings that you need to occupy to accomplish that. Education is obviously key. Every organization typically has a core set of things they're going to want you to stay up to date on. Maybe for that next role you're aspiring for, there's a core set of courses internally or externally that you should take. Particularly for those who want to get into leadership, I can say firsthand, it's very different going from an individual contributor where you don't have to manage people to a place where you are leading a team. There are a very different core set of skills that you need, both from the people side, but also from the business side. And taking courses and learning those different nuances is really important, and it's worth investing in. In many cases, organizations actually subsidize a big portion or all of that. So if you haven't yet asked for that, I would highly recommend doing so. I think going back to the point we talked about impact, really execution is everything, right? When you exceed expectations, it makes it that much easier. So make sure you're consistently doing that. Let's spend a quick moment on this whole mentorship versus sponsorship thing, because I think this is a term that often gets conflated or people misconstrue as sort of one and the same. So mentorship is the guidance or advice and knowledge sharing that you receive from others. Sponsorship, on the other hand, is like advocacy by someone who has the power, who are in the important room sometimes when you're not. So a key example of this would be during performance management, performance evaluation cycles. If there are other leaders in the room that can attest to your work, or other people that can advocate for you on your behalf when you're not in the room, those are sponsors. Those are the people you want to build relationships with well before. You want to make sure that you've documented your success, shared it with them formally and informally. Keep them in the loop. These are relationships you should form and invest in, and make sure that they understand where you're trying to go. And if you've done the good work, if you've shown the impact, exceeded expectations, they're more likely to pull you along, which is needed. We all need that. A variation of a quote I recently heard, I really appreciate, is Black employees are often over-mentored and under-sponsored. And think about that for a minute. Over-mentored, under-sponsored. A lot of people are willing to help, particularly when they see somebody who doesn't necessarily represent the face of the full organization. They're willing to extend the arm. But do we have enough people who are willing to pull others up? I think we need more of that, and we all have a responsibility as we get in roles of leadership to do the same. So one of the questions I received, prior to preparing this presentation was, what are those steps you can actually do to get those mentors and to find those sponsors, both inside and outside the organization? So here are a few tips that might be helpful for you. Inside the organization, you can find out, does your company have formal programs around this? Can you find allies who are in leadership roles? Are there formal programs you can maybe create yourself? These are things that are really important that might be worthwhile for you to explore. Even outside your organization, there's a lot you can do. You can look online. There are tons of professional communities where people with relevant skills and experience would probably be more than happy to help. Particularly in this environment with more of a remote work-centric environment, connecting with people, while difficult, is still very viable and feasible. So put the work and make it happen. And then, like I mentioned, use tools like LinkedIn, online communities, and get the work done. So if you don't have a personal development plan or a PDP, I would highly recommend creating one. It becomes a roadmap for how you will get your goals done both now and in the future. And it works through those previous strategies that I outlined, those 8 pieces. It really does a good job of kind of highlighting how you should get there. And there are tons of templates out there. I've actually created a link right here so that you can grab a copy of some PDP templates that might be helpful. As a quick example, I've used a PDP for multiple years. Essentially what I do is I find a template that works with my style. I outline my goals, the skills that I want to attain to reach those goals. I share it with my manager. I have a discussion on what an accurate and fair timeline would look like. How do I get from where I am to where I want to be, and what are all the things I need to do to accomplish that? Maybe it's I need to learn certain skills that I simply don't have. Maybe I need to augment this one skill that I haven't invested in. Maybe it's taking on more responsibility. Maybe it's working with people cross-functionally in ways that I haven't before. There's probably a long list for every role or job that's relevant. And creating a PDP and sharing it with ideally your leadership, but also your colleagues and peers, it makes it easier not only for you to document the stuff, but for you to hold yourself accountable and for others to hold you accountable. So we've covered the harsh facts. We've covered how you should think about your career and some winning strategies. Let's wrap up so we can get into some Q&A. So some key takeaways. Like, this is going to be an uphill battle. Let's call it what it is. Like, career development, career growth is a challenge for the vast majority. Very few people I know have ever had a linear, easy, clear path to success. It's a long, blurry road, and that's okay, right? But recognize that and put the work in, and things will work out over time. The way you think about your career is equally as important, right? This is not a career growth traditional ladder. This is more of a lattice. And ultimately what this means is working through a set of skills that might help you get direction closer to your goal and not just going step by step by step. Impact is obviously a secret sauce, and telling your story matters a lot. So you document things, you share it, you celebrate your wins, and you make sure the people that have committed to your success are held responsible and accountable. And as long as you have a plan and you can advocate for yourself, you're in good shape. So with that, I want to wrap up. Happy to jump into some Q&A. If you have questions, feel free to send me a note at any of these links above. And the slides are actually available at that link as well.
Man, listen, hey, Mark, a ton of great information. Definitely appreciate you providing some links